Welcome to another episode of The Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters, and I am your host for this fabulous little half hour where we talk all things auto racing. Only a few races happened over the weekend, but the Formula One Championship could get wrapped up this weekend at the Las Vegas Grand Prix. We'll talk about that later on in the show. But first, we'll go ahead and jump right into the news because it is a packed little news hour for our first segment of this show. But before we get into that, reminder that if you like the show, if you want to support it, please remember to follow me. My name is Rob Peeters. You can find me on social media at RPEETERS33. And then remember, you can get motorsport news from WTHR by clicking on WTHR.com/sports and then under Motorsports. So let's go ahead and get into some of that news for today because Formula One has some new news. Last week we talked about the Monaco Grand Prix being extended through 2031. Now, apparently, since that is going to move to the first weekend in June, Montreal, the Canadian Grand Prix, is now moving up into May so that it can the logistics make sense between the Canadian Grand Prix and the Miami Grand Prix. So they're both over here in North America before they fly back over to Europe. So that is a big change that we're going to be seeing now starting in 2026. And again, I am not confident that the Canadian Grand Prix will not be held during the week of Indianapolis 500 qualifying. I very much expect it to still be impossible now for Formula One drivers to run Indianapolis. Unfortunately, I'm not so sure that is any more in the cards, especially with the race being moved back. And again, Racemas being basically over. That's just kind of a disappointment, but that's it for the Formula One news because, again, we're going into the Las Vegas Grand Prix. We're going to preview that here coming up later on in the show. But now we're going to move on into some IndyCar news because Gavin Ward, who's been serving as the team principal of Arrow McLaren, the IndyCar team, for the past 2 years, has announced that he is departed the team. He's departed the team. He's left. He's no longer as involved with the team. And that is huge news. That is very big news because he has seen that team grow quite a bit. And it will be very interesting to see who they decide to replace him with. We'll find out. And then finally here in IndyCar news, Stingray Robb is staying on the grid. He's signed a deal with Juncos Hollinger Racing to race either the 77 or 78, I don't know what, next year in IndyCar. Now, again, this comes on the heels of last week. We talked about Roman Grosjean probably wouldn't have a ride in IndyCar because of budget. He didn't have the budget to do it because the costs of IndyCar are astronomical now with the introduction of the hybrid. And then as well, he criticized the marketing, which I've been a vocal critic of for quite some time now, of IndyCar. So definitely some very big changes going on there in the world of IndyCar. It'll be interesting to see if Roman Grosjean is able to land a ride in 2025, which would be crazy if he's not. Someone who has admitted he wanted to be here, wanted to be in IndyCar, now might be on the outside looking in. But speaking of IndyCar, as we move on into IMSA news, Acura Meyershank Racing will field IndyCar regulars Scott Dixon, Alex Palou, and Felix Rosenqvist. Funny how only Rosenqvist drives for him in IndyCar. But anyway, he's going to field those three drivers in the number 60 at the Rolex 24 at Daytona coming up in January. So we'll have a super team, an IndyCar super team competing at the Rolex 24 coming up in January. I'm excited for that. That'll be pretty cool to see. Of course, the Rolex 24 always brings out the best drivers in motorsports to come out there, just like Le Mans does as well. You know, these are big endurance races that everyone wants to be a part of if they can. Now, speaking of staying kind of in the sports cars, moving into touring cars, we're going to talk about Supercars because they did crown a champion over the weekend, and that's also going to be the big talking point of this show that we'll get to later on, so stay tuned for that. But for now, let's talk about the Supercars news. Tim Slade, who has now retired from full-time driving, will join Matt Stone Racing as a co-driver with Nick Percat in the endurance races beginning next year. So again, if you're new to Supercars, if you're not really familiar with how all of that works, Supercars has their race weekends are typically broken up into 2, 3, or 4 races per weekend. So sometimes you could have one race on Saturday, one race on Sunday. Some days you could have 2 races on Saturday and 2 races on Sunday. Some days you could have 2 races on Saturday and one race on Sunday. They also have larger races that are called endurance races, the enduros. And for that, you have to have a co-driver. And so a lot of drivers, sign on to be co-drivers if they can't get full-time rides, or if they're desiring to step back from full-time driving but still be involved and still drive. Craig Lowndes does that. Jamie Whincup still does that. Both legends in Supercars still competing. And now Tim Slade is going to be throwing his hat with Stone Brothers Racing next year. And then also in that same kind of category, Mark Winterbottom, Frosty, will join Tickford Racing. He's going back to Ford, so if you're a longtime Supercars viewer, Frosty's been a Ford guy for the longest time. I remember him, like I said, in the Pepsi Max Ford. He's now going to be co-driving alongside Cam Waters with Tickford Racing beginning next season. So that's good news for Frosty. I think a lot of people kind of figured that was going to happen. He was going to probably land at some kind of Ford team, probably in a co-driver role. It is very disappointing, though, that he's not full-time. It's very sad. I'm disappointed personally as a fan, but that's the rule. That's racing. That is the beast of motorsports. It's a cutthroat little it's a cutthroat business. It can be. It really can be. Now into the world of NASCAR, because speaking of things being cutthroat, NASCAR says it will allow 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports to operate as open teams next year after lifting a clause in the latest charter agreement that says you could not compete in NASCAR if you were suing. So they've lifted this. They've basically changed their own language because, again, they can do that. They're NASCAR. They can do that. And they've changed their own language. And now 2311 and FRM can compete as open teams. Now, there's some question, how will this hurt or help the lawsuit that's going on? Because, again, we remember the preliminary injunction that was asked for was not granted. And I imagine this is going to go to trial. It more likely than not is going to go to trial. And, it'll be very interesting to see how all that turns out and how that plays out. Because, as they've said, Tyler Reddick doesn't have to stay with the team next year if they don't have a charter. But as we'll talk about a little bit later, both of these teams appear to be intent on competing next year regardless. So just something to keep an eye on as that continues, as the offseason moves on, as this lawsuit continues. Just something to keep an eye on. And don't forget, we'll talk about it every single time that there's an update to the NASCAR lawsuit. You'll know about it right here on the Racing Report. We'll talk about it. You won't miss it. We'll keep you informed. Don't worry. Now moving on into the next piece of NASCAR news, which is really not NASCAR news, more kind of dirt racing news, but it also involves a NASCAR driver. Kyle Busch is going to make his debut at this upcoming Chili Bowl in January. So again, the Chili Bowl is coming up. It's a big, huge midget car race event. It is held inside the Tulsa Expo Center. It's an indoor race, so if you're racing in January in Oklahoma, I would hope that it would be indoors. But it is a fantastic race. If you have flow racing, which if you're able to afford it, I don't know how I am. I probably shouldn't. It's probably the worst investment someone my age could make, but I need to watch the Chili Bowl every year. I have to watch the Chili Bowl, so I have a flow racing subscription for that. But yeah, not exactly something I'm going to be proud of saying, but definitely something to check out, especially if you're a big Kyle Busch fan coming up in a couple of months. So moving on into the next piece of NASCAR news here, we have the broadcast lineup for when Amazon and TNT take over their 10-race NASCAR summer stint, beginning with the Coca-Cola 600 at the end of May. That's going to be very different, but we know who's going to be calling that race now. It's going to be Adam Alexander. It's going to be Steve Letarte and Dale Earnhardt Jr. Now, interesting to note here, Steve Letarte is still apparently going to be with NBC. So when NBC continues to take over the Cup Series broadcasting, he's still going to be calling races. So you will hear Steve Letarte for over half of the NASCAR season on Cup broadcasts. So if you like Steve Letarte, that's great. But if you want my opinion, I think that this is a really, really good lineup, because I've always been of the opinion that if you're going to have a three-man booth, one, you have to have a play-by-play guy. You have to have an analyst that either drove the car or worked on the car. So we're talking a crew chief or a driver, ideally. Two drivers, not so good. Two crew chiefs, not so good. One thing that will be weird is TNT coverage without Wally Dallenbach. That'll be the first time without Wally Dallenbach. And again, we don't know who the pit reporters will be. So we have no idea who they're going to get to add to that broadcast lineup, especially on pit road. But I imagine that news will be coming sooner rather than later. Now for some of the bigger silly season news in the world of NASCAR, RFK Racing has announced that Ryan Preece will join the team in a brand new number 60 Ford Mustang beginning in 2025. And with this signing, they've also announced that Kroger will be moving from JTG Doherty Racing over to RFK Racing and sponsor all three, so Brad Keselowski, Chris Buescher, and now Ryan Preece, all three of those cars. So this is a huge, massive cash influx likely for RFK Racing, and especially last year, both cars, both Brad Keselowski and Chris Buescher found their way into victory lane. It could very well be a good match. Now, I will say this, I think this is Ryan Preece's last chance really to get a Cup Series win. That's what he's desperately missing on his resume. He has a stacked resume when you look at it with everything else he's done, but he does not have a Cup Series win, and I think this is his last opportunity to really make that impression and really get that thing done. So look for Ryan Preece to probably have a chip on his shoulder coming up this year. Who knows what'll happen? We'll probably see how that goes. It'll be fun to watch. But important to note here that charter is not a bought charter. They are actually leasing this charter from Rick Ware Racing. Now, it's important to know, I don't know what Rick Ware Racing is going to do next year, but I believe this was the car number 15 charter. So it's possible Rick Ware maybe goes down to one car next year. I highly doubt that they will run an open car. Maybe, I don't know, but I doubt it. Based upon their business model, I don't think it would make sense for them to run an open car unless they had substantial sponsorship or funding behind it. And I don't know if they're going to get that because it is Rick Ware Racing. Just something to monitor and keep a look at. It'll be interesting to see how that goes. Todd Gilliland is moving into the 34 car at Front Row Motorsports for next year. That's an interesting note because now that Michael McDowell has left the team, he's moving over to Spire Motorsports. They've moved up Todd Gilliland into the 34. He's not going to be in the 38 anymore. And he's going to inherit the Love sponsorship, which is ironic because Love started their sponsorship with his father, David, about 10 years ago with FRM. Now, the purist in me probably wanted to see Love's just move over to 38 and Todd stay in the 38 because David Gilliland was almost always driving car number 38. If he was with Robert Yates or if he was with FRM, it didn't matter. I mean, he was usually in a car number 38. And Todd Gilliland, since he's been with FRM in the Truck Series and then now in the Cup Series, he's also been in the car number 38. So, going to take some getting used to, going to take some adjustments probably. But good for Todd being able to lock that down. And some more silly season news going on, some more driver news specifically. 2311 Racing has also announced that Riley Herbst is joining the team in car number 34. So they're going to have two cars sponsored by Monster Energy. That won't be confusing for a spotter at all. Plus Ty Gibbs, who is also in a Toyota. So 3 Monster Energy Toyotas will be out on track next year. 2 of them being owned by the same car owner in Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin. Just making it more confusing. Now, I believe this is supposed to be full-time. That being said, again, keep in mind that 23XI does not have a charter. So this is going to be a huge financial upheaval, I think, for them to take if they're going to actually make this work. This is going to be tough because apparently Martin Truex Jr. still wants to run a partial Cup schedule, and it was rumored that Martin Truex Jr. could run a 4th car or 3rd car maybe for 23XI Racing. It seems less likely now that he could run a 4th car, but then that makes you wonder, well, if they're not going to run a 4th car, then is Riley Herbst deal full-time? I believe it is full-time, but that is, again, also something that we'll continue to monitor as things move on. Daniel Hemric is moving from the Cup Series down to the Truck Series. He's going to join McAnally Hilgeman Racing next year because he announced he wasn't returning to Kaulig Racing a couple months ago. Now he's going to go back down to the Truck Series and run the number 19 car with sponsorship from Napa in the Truck Series. So, again, another Cup driver dropping down from the Cup Series to the Truck Series. Does this make the Truck Series better? Probably. Could this give Daniel Hemric an opportunity to win his 2nd NASCAR National Series race? Maybe. We'll see. Just hoping for the best for Hemric because, I think he's a good, solid dude. So we'll see what happens with that. A guy who's probably not the most solid dude is joining our Motorsports. Kris Wright is going to replace Anthony Alfredo in the number 5 Chevrolet for our Motorsports beginning next year in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. If you know Kris Wright, you're probably familiar with his cautions. Yeah. And then finally here, before we take our first break of the show, Circuit of the Americas made a big announcement on Wednesday saying that they're going to actually change the layout for the NASCAR Cup Series and Xfinity Series races next year in 2025. So, no longer are we going to be running the full circuit at Circuit of the Americas. We're going to be now running the national circuit, which is substantially shorter. It doesn't have the long straightaway, the long backstretch, I should say, and the hairpin and everything. If you're familiar with Supercars, then you know when they came over stateside for the first time ever, first and only time, unfortunately, in 2013 when they ran at Circuit of the Americas, when it was just less than a year old. It had just opened by, I believe, 6 months prior to when they came here. They ran the same course. So it's basically you're going to, instead of going through the S's, you kind of take half of the S's, you go through, you cut the backstretch, basically. You cut the track in half almost. So if you could visualize that, just that's how they're going to do it. But there's some big changes coming up there in the world of NASCAR. So we'll take our first break here on the Racing Report, and when we come back, we're going to discuss whether or not playoffs belong in motorsports. Don't go anywhere. You're watching the Racing Report. Welcome back to the Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters, and now let's talk about the races that did happen this weekend, even though, however few, we still had races to talk about. So the first one we're going to talk about today is the Macau Grand Prix. If you're not familiar with this, I talked about it last week. It is a traditional Formula 3 race. This year it was run with Formula Regional cars that takes place in Macau, which is kind of in China, and it runs across the streets of Macau, and it's very fast and very tight at the same time. There's very fast sections where you're flat out, where you're, for maybe half a mile maybe, and then there's portions where it's almost like Monaco, where you're talking hairpin turns with barriers on both sides. A thrilling event, usually. Of course, this year it used Formula Regional cars, so the slipstreaming wasn't exactly as prominent as it had been in the past with Formula 3 cars, but still, I thought it was a relatively entertaining race, still a good one. But let's talk about who won it. because an American won the race for the first time since 1981. And let me tell you something, guys. If you do not know who won the 1981 Macau Grand Prix, don't worry, because I didn't know who won it until I was writing this show. His name was Bob Earl, and he won the race in 1981. He was the first and up until this weekend, only American to ever win the Macau Grand Prix. Now, this weekend, American Ugo Chukwu. I had to get that. I didn't want to butcher it. I knew his name, but I promise you, he is full-blooded American. I looked him up. His mother is Nigerian and his father is Italian. He was born in 2007 in New York City. The man is full-blooded American. Naturally, has wealthy parents because he's in open wheel single seaters. You don't do that without wealthy parents typically, but still, Ugo Chukwu won the Macau Grand Prix this weekend, becoming the first American to win the race since 1981. Now let's talk about the Supercars race in the Adelaide 500, because this weekend we crowned a champion in Supercars. Will Brown is a Supercars champion. He's going to drive the car number 1 next year. This comes in his first season for AAA Red Bull Ampol Racing after replacing Shane Van Gisbergen, and he wins the title. Brock Feeney finishes second to him, his own teammate. So it's a huge accomplishment here for AAA Racing. And of course, Brock Feeney won the race, the first race, and then in the second race, Brock Feeney crossed the line first, but he didn't win the race because he punted Chaz Mostert out of the way and then got a time penalty, which awarded the race win to Will Brown, who celebrated the race win and then also the championship. But the thing about this that's important that I want to talk about today is our big question. Do playoffs belong in motorsports? Now, this was the final Supercars champion to be crowned without a playoff system, with a full season of points being accumulated. So it's a significant time, I think, to bring this up, especially since we're now 2 weeks removed from the NASCAR Cup Series champion being crowned and all of the controversy that came behind that. Now, honestly, when NASCAR first created the chase, because let's talk about this. Let's delve into this. When NASCAR first created the chase, it came down to, we're going to take the top 10 drivers in points, because historically, the top 10 drivers in points with 10 races to go, had anybody lower than that had never won the title before. So that made sense. And they said, okay, we're going to reset the points to an amount unachievable from anybody 11th and up, and then we're going to let these 10 drivers battle it out over the course of the final 10 races. And then that's how we're going to determine a champion. Now, they did this because Matt Kenseth won the 2003 championship by just being consistent. He only won one race, and it was in the beginning of the season, I believe at Las Vegas, and that's all he did. He had incredibly consistent finishes for the rest of the 2003 season. Ryan Newman, however, won 8 times, but remember how Ryan Newman was racing back then. Those engines were unstable. They were turning insanely high RPMs. There were moments where Ryan Newman wasn't even shifting at a place like Pocono. He was just going down into turn 1 at Pocono in 3rd gear. Like, it was nothing. And then wondering why the engine exploded. So naturally, you had a problem in that. And NASCAR decided, okay, well, we need to figure out a way to sell the final races of the season, because you don't want people to tune out. You don't want sponsors to tune out. You don't want networks to stop caring. You want people to really build this up. Now, that was the original argument. And I think now we have been 21 years removed from this. We had the 20th incarnation of the playoffs, but basically the 21st year since this was announced in the late 2003. Where are we now as a sport with NASCAR? Where is NASCAR now as a sport? They're not anywhere near they were at the height in 2003. They're not. And the decline was very clear. There are so many fans that do not like playoffs in motorsports. There are so many fans that are against it. Now, drivers, for the most part, I think that they are indifferent, because to them, the rules are the rules, and they're just going to play by the rules however they see fit. And if there's rules to manipulate, then they're going to do that. They're going to find loopholes in rules, teams as well. It's not maybe as big of a deal to them. It's maybe not on their mind as much as it is for the fan. And I think really that's where the disconnect is because this move, the decision from NASCAR all those years ago to make the playoffs, to create the chase, was done for fans with an idea of keeping fans interested throughout the whole season. And it's a noble cause. Don't get me wrong. It's an absolutely noble cause. But what you have to understand is racing is different. It's so much different. The idea of a race, of a championship, of a season-long championship, it used to be, how reliable is your car over the course of a season? Can you build the most reliable car? And if you do that, can you make it all these races with consistent finishes? And that's how we'll determine a champion. Obviously, wins are nice, but it's more about building a car that is reliable and fast at the same time. That's the challenge given to both drivers and teams. When you introduce the parity that NASCAR has introduced, especially think about the car of tomorrow, with the Gen 6, with now the Gen 7, changing all of that up, maybe playoffs make sense now because the cars are super reliable. The engines are super reliable. You don't have a situation like a Ryan Newman is going out there every week and turning, 100,000 RPMs going into turn 1 at Pocono. You know what I mean? That's really what we're looking at. I think personally that playoffs do not have their place in motorsports, but they are here to stay regardless. There's not a lot we can do about it. The Supercars finals concept makes a little bit more sense, but again, it's still a gimmick to make the final races of the season matter. And I think the thing that fans tuned in for was the fact that the final races of the season, if it mattered, great. If it didn't, it's still an event. It was still an event that people wanted to come to. It was still something that people could plan their weekends around and their holidays around. I don't know if we'll ever see a world now in the future without playoffs in motorsports. Do I think that someone like Formula One could come up with one? Honestly, possibly. It's entirely possible. I'm not going to put it past them. They came up with sprint races. Why did they come up with sprint races? For fans. To give fans more things to do during the race weekend. When did their ratings peak in the United States? During the 2021 championship between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. Now that came down because of a natural title battle. But if Formula One wants to capture that lightning in a bottle and make everything a Game 7 moment, kind of like NASCAR does, where's that going to stand? It's controversial. It's hugely controversial. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's for fans anymore. It hasn't been for fans, and it's not for fans. It's primarily for TV. It's primarily for advertisers. It's primarily to gain more money to the series because there's less sponsorship money to go around. You've got to find more ways to get money. And this is their way of doing that, of getting people excited that wouldn't normally get excited about the final races of a racing season. So, with that, I do want to hear your thoughts. Let me know on social media or in the comments what you feel about that. We're going to take our final break of the show, but when we come back, we're going to talk about all of the races that are indeed coming up later on in the world of racing. Don't go anywhere. You're watching The Racing Report. Welcome back to The Racing Report. It's about time to say goodbye for this episode, but let's take a look real quick at what's coming up in the world of racing. So we've got the Formula One Las Vegas Grand Prix coming up this weekend. Don't miss it. It's going to be on at 1 a.m. Eastern on Sunday morning. So maybe you will miss it. But definitely anything can happen. Maybe you'll be able to stay up late enough to, at the very least, catch practice or qualifying. That might be nice. But then after that, then they're going to have 2 more races, take a week or so off, race at Qatar, and then finish the season up in Abu Dhabi. I imagine Max Verstappen could likely clinch the championship this weekend, especially if Lando Norris has a problem. He had a problem last year, just saying. But then after that, we'll have the Formula E season begins. That season begins on December 7th in Sao Paulo, Brazil. The racing season ends and then it begins. Isn't that wonderful? And then we'll wait till January. Moving on into January, we got the Chili Bowl coming up the week of January 13th through the 18th with the main feature, the A main, scheduled for January 18th. Let's hope that it doesn't go into Sunday morning, January 19th, like it did a couple of years ago. Not a fun thing. Hopefully things go streamlined, and again, Kyle Busch is going to be in that race. Lots of other very, very popular dirt racers as well. And then the Rolex 24 at Daytona is coming up again Saturday, January 25th, and Sunday, January 26th. Be sure to watch that. And then, of course, NASCAR returns with the Clash at the Bowman Gray Stadium, which again we talked about last week, is receiving upgrades. So good to see that. But that is everything that's happening in the world of racing coming up. So be sure to be on the lookout for some of our evergreen content here on the Racing Report. We'll talk about all different kinds of things going on in the world of racing. We'll rank things. We'll discuss things. We'll do all that kind of stuff. Be sure to follow me on social media for the latest motorsport news and my musings and ramblings. It's at RPEETERS33 is where you can find me on social media. And then remember, new episodes of the Racing Report every week on YouTube and on your local Tegna streaming platforms. So my name is Rob Peeters, and this has been the Racing Report. We hope you all have a great week, and be sure to tune in next week.